All right, welcome everybody. I think this is our 8th Beetcoin dialogue, and we are definitely in need of positive energy and paying attention to the constructive things we're doing to build a peaceable economy these days. So thank you all for making some time. Tonight we are very lucky to have 2 guests. The first, who will speak just for a few minutes, is Michael Reilly, who is the founder of Foodshed Capital in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is one of the 5 groups that is making 0% loans. So Michael can just share a little bit what's on his mind and how he came to this and how he sees things. And then we have the recipient of one of his 0% loans, Daniel Griffith of Timshel Wildland. And he'll do the bulk of the presenting tonight. And then as those of you know who've been on these things, together those guys will take about a half hour, and then we'll have a half hour for Q&A, and we can linger a little longer if people feel so moved. In case this is your first one, these are very informal on purpose. This is meant to be a very friendly environment to learn, share, ask, appreciate, etc. So with that said, and it's hosted by Beetcoin. I have to always put this little hat on. If you have not yet been to the beetcoin.org website, please go there and check out what we're doing. We're very early in this process. We're taking the long view, and we are just going to be working to build a community of online donors to generate a grassroots flow of capital that can be used to make matching grants to groups like Foodshed Capital, like what Michael Reilly is doing, to give him more capital to make more 0% loans. And once the capital goes to those local groups, it stays local and just recirculates in perpetuity local. So this is all about building local capacity in communities around the world. Now the world is a big place compared to the 5 groups we currently have, but such is the nature of things. So check out beetcoin.org if you haven't. And with that said, Michael Reilly, take the baton, and then when you're finished, go ahead and just pass it to Daniel. And thanks for joining us.
Sorry, was I on mute that whole time? All right, I'll get the hang of this. As I already joked, this is about my 6th Zoom call today, so you'd think I'd have the hang of it. Anyway, I've got a timer on. I'm gonna zip through this slideshow really fast so that Daniel has plenty of time to talk and tell you much more exciting things than I can tell you. It's great to see everybody tonight, and as Woody said, I'm Michael Reilly. I am the founder of Foodshed Capital. We're based here in Virginia. I'm coming to you tonight from Charlottesville. I started the organization about 4 years ago. In 2018, we launched Foodshed Capital, and our mission is to provide financial stewardship to small-scale diversified farms. We have a loan fund, and we also provide quite a bit of technical assistance. I started the program because I was really involved in my local food system here in Charlottesville. At the time, I was serving on the local farmers market board and was on the Virginia Association of Biological Farming board. And I grew up in a Wall Street culture in New York, and couldn't get away from it fast enough. So I was really, really intrigued by the slow money concept, and began reading Woody's work and was just really taken in by it. And so we launched our program as a soil fund in May of 2018. This is my ode to Woody here, the slow money principles. And by January of 2019, we made our first loan. So it took us about 8 months to raise the capital that we had set a goal to raise, which was $100,000, and we made our first loan. And from there, it really took off. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. And we found that the need was just so incredibly great around this region. And so we had originally been we had been fiscally sponsored by the Institute, and then we spun off and formed Foodshed Capital. We actually became a certified CDFI, which stands for Community Development Financial Institution, in May 2020. I won't get too much into the weeds on that, but it has allowed us to raise some more funding and to grow the organization to accommodate some of the needs that have really existed throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. We do still primarily work within Virginia, but we do quite a bit of work now outside of Virginia in our surrounding states, North Carolina, Maryland, up into Pennsylvania, and in West Virginia as well. In this past July, we made our 50th loan, and just last month we passed $1 million in capital deployed, which we're super excited about. This is a real quick snapshot of our loans. I won't go through all this detail, but I'm happy to share this deck with anybody who wants to afterwards. And you can also sign up on our website for emails, information about the work that we do. Technical assistance, again, is a huge part of the work that we do. And this is something that we have added quite a bit of capacity toward. And as we've grown our team, we now have actually 7 people on our team. And we just recently hired somebody to help us, or actually a couple people within the last year, to really help us increase the amount of technical assistance that we can provide. We also have a program for BIPOC farmers that we call our Reparative Capital Program. In the interest of full transparency, we started with 0% loans for the first several years. We have strayed a little bit from that just because of our growth and our need to raise some interest-bearing capital to increase our capacity. But we have remained committed to 0% loans for BIPOC farmers. And so we are very much determined to really use the slow money principles as a platform to amplify the need for working with BIPOC farmers, Black and brown farmers, in a way that can truly change the system. So often there's a talk about equity in the food system, but often we find that organizations, particularly those lending capital, fall back on sort of the same old traditional mechanisms, and we're determined not to do that. This is just an example of a project we just completed in North Carolina in collaboration with Slow Money North Carolina, Carol Hewitt. Some of you may know her down there. Super excited about this. It was a $125,000 loan to help a Black family purchase family land that had been on the verge of being sold out to development. So that was definitely our biggest project, and one that we're really very much excited about. So I met Daniel, the star of the show here tonight, about probably 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I don't know, Daniel, you can correct me, whenever you started selling at that little market there downtown, that he and his wife, when they were selling chickens, and was sort of taken in by his passion behind the work that he was doing. I think we lost touch for a little while, but then in 2020, early 2020, late 2019, early 2020, we reconnected, and we gave Daniel a $15,000 loan to support his farm, which he'll talk a little bit about. And as they say, that was the beginning of a long friendship, to paraphrase one of my favorite movies. Not doing a good job of it, but we've just worked so closely together over time, and it has really continued to flourish into a much bigger relationship around this Commonwealth partnership and the work that he is doing around partnering with various farms all over this region. We were fortunate enough this last fall to receive a $250,000 USDA Regional Food Systems Partnership grant to support this work. And these are all the partners that are involved in this project. And we are now in the process of actually applying for a much bigger pot of money from the USDA's Climate Smart Commodities Program. And we're pretty confident in that. And we hope that with this additional funding and hopefully support from anyone else that is interested in supporting this work, that we can continue to grow what is essentially a regeneratively verified meat supply chain throughout this region. And Daniel will talk more about just the phenomenal innovative work that he is doing. And so with that, I will say thank you. I know, of course, I went over my 5 minutes, but hopefully not too much. And I will turn it over to Daniel and let him talk about the work that he does. And I think you'll quickly see the passion behind everything that he does do on behalf of the local food system. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Michael. I'm going to pull up my slides here. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see a picture of me trying to kiss a cow? Good, cool. Yeah, before I jump into just a little something that I prepared, Michael and I was trying to, over dinner, right previous to this, my wife and I, we were trying to come up with how many times, Michael, you and I have talked on the phone over the last 2 years. And we really actually tried. I'm pretty sure it was weekly for about an hour for almost 2 years straight. And so friendship is a small word for the beauty of what we've been able to co-create here in this Mid-Atlantic region. So, you know, I'm glad to be doing the work, but we couldn't do it without you. And never forget that. So what I'm going to plan to do is spend 20 to 30 minutes talking about one, where I'll begin is with our farm, set some context, a little bit of my story, a little bit of what we're into. And then what I want to do is step back or step up, really open the canopy into the overstory of what we're really trying to co-create within this Commonwealth partnership with Foodshed Capital and step beyond our farm, which is to me very important to do. And so maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes I'll spend on our farm, and the second 10 to 20 minutes I'll spend talking about this network and collaborative system that we are building here in this Mid-Atlantic region. But to the farm. So my wife and I, we run a 400-acre quote unquote farm here in Nelson County, Virginia. About 3 years ago, we changed our name. It was Timshel at first, Timshel Farm, and we turned it into something called a Wildland, for lack of a better term. We saw what we were doing, and we couldn't describe it as a farm. We produce food and nourishment and happiness and peace and soil, and we sequester carbon, I guess. But we were trying to do something a little bit more, and that's really what I want to focus on here. And so it's my wife and I. We have 3 wonderful, wonderful children. Elowen is 4, Tecumseh is 3, and Sequoia is just over 1. And they are the rowdy Timshel bunch, and they go with us everywhere. And so before I dive into the farm, I want to start here, as I always like to do. I'm not much of a practitioner. I'm a philosopher poet. An actually published philosopher poet. That's not a self-description. But I approach all things in this way. And so before we dive into the farm, I want to take a quick moment. It is our opinion, it is our farm's, or in this case, our wildlands philosophy, that regeneration, that the actual creation and nurturing of food and food systems is more about relationship than anything else. I wrote a book, it was published last year. You can buy it on Amazon. It's called Wild Like Flowers. And the subtitle is this idea of regenerating relationship. Regeneration is relationship. This is something that's absolutely pivotal to our mission here at the Wildland. But also, I think, to the future of farming, and I think to the future of all species, let alone humanity, which has such a problem in these modern times, cultivating and nurturing a very real sense of relationship. So much of our community, if we can call it that, little c community, happens over social media, my generation and the generation following me. That the true definition, the true impact, the power, the abundance, the reality of relationship is so far foreign to us. And I think regenerative agriculture, viewed from this lens, has great hope in remediating that. And before I move from this, I want to make 2 quick comments. The first of which is in regenerative agriculture, we have this term. It's called herd effect. You might know farmers, you might be farmers yourselves. And what regenerative agricultural grazers, people who manage cattle or sheep or goats in pastures or woodlands or shrublands or savannas, when they're managing these animals, they move them from paddock to paddock to mimic, as they say, the migrational patterns and the predator-prey connections of the wild herds that predate either the agricultural revolution or modern technology and property lines, property boundaries, if you will. And these are all marvelous things: herd effect, stock density, rotational grazing, regenerative agriculture, all very similar words meaning the same thing. And that's increased soil health, increased biodiversity, increased sequestering ability of that soil for carbon, bringing it out of the air, long-term storage into the soil. It's an increase of many things. But here at the Wildland, we always want to take one step further. We're not just looking at the ecology, but the relationship between the ecological components. And so when people come to the Wildland, we give many Wildland tours. I'll talk about it here in a little bit. They always ask us very farm-like questions, like what is our cattle hang weights, and at what age do we castrate our bull calves, and what's our weaning weight percentage, meaning what are the calves' weight when we wean them from their moms. These are all fine things. At the Wildland, we do none of these things, and I like to tell that to everybody. We'll talk about that in a second. We're more interested in counting butterflies and grasshoppers and wildflowers than we are, weighing our cattle and castrating our bull calves. It's a different focus. It's in my opinion, a more holistic focus, and it's not a focus that I think should be universally adopted. To be very clear, it is something that is highly contextualized to ourselves. My wife is a trained ecologist at college, and I always say we met in the middle with wildland farming. This picture in 2012 and 2013, I spent a year as an archaeologist in France. We studied the ancient human origins of Gaul, a region that is very old in terms of humanity's emergence, as a dominant species. I spent maybe 2 or 3 months here working on some digs in Lascaux Cave. It's one of the oldest caves with paintings known today. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, but it's a reverence. That's all I want to mention here is this reverence. Regeneration being relationship is reverence for all of life. And in this reverence, there is reciprocity and true regeneration. And if you ever get a chance to go to Lascaux, France, it's just maybe 2 hours south of Paris, and be able to stand in this cave and look at these paintings and drawings. It's overwhelming, much more overwhelming than, I don't know, seeing the Eiffel Tower or something like that. So progressing onto the farm, this is a civil pasture here at Timshel Wildland. We raise heritage cattle, 100% grass-born, fed and finished. We don't even tag our cows. They're a little bit too wild for that. But they're an ancient horned breed. They come from Northern Ireland, and they're about half the size of your commercial Angus. So people always come and laugh at my small little cows. And I always laugh at them that they eat 1/3 as much forage, and they produce 2/3 as much meat as your standard Angus. And so I'm a richer farmer than they will ever be in that sense. So they laugh at me, I laugh at them. But the point is they're a truly a wild breed. I mean, they're domestic, and we move them and we love them, and they follow us. But they graze in systems like this 365 days a year under dappled shade of ancient white oaks. There's a white oak in this picture to the left. We actually cored it 5 years ago. It was 347 years old. And so it's truly dappled shade of ancient white oaks. Other pictures of our smaller cows. We have a herd of about 100 mamas. We focus on breeding, not in terms of which cow breeds which cow, but we focus on the adapted genetics. It's a term that is epigenetics, which is how genetics, your DNA, is expressed itself, how it's expressing itself in view of and in light of climatic factors, pressures, stressors, lack of stressors, climate, rain, lack of rain, different forages, etc. And so what we're trying to do is create our own Central Virginia breed that's perfectly adapted to our climate, perfectly adapted to our landscape, and thrives on no input. And before I move off of cattle, it's important here to note one of the central tenets to this Timshel Wildland, our quote unquote farm, we call it a project. We call it the Wildland Project, because in many ways we're trying to produce food and nourishment for our community, but in other very real sense, what we're trying to create is a very emergently abundant, if I can say it that way, reality where a farm isn't an input suck, meaning it's not just sucking in inputs to have an output, but it is itself a fully cyclic system. And we get closer to that every day. A good analogy or a good exemplar, I should say, of this lower input system is our pork program. So we raise another ancient breed from the British Isles. These are Gloucestershire old spots. And we run our own sows and boars. We breed on the farm. We farrow in the woods. We use the term farrow to finish, meaning that we farrow on the farm and we finish on the farm. So we sell pork. And about maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, my intro into farming, I was a Division I college athlete. I said 2 or 3 years ago, and now I'm jumping back about 12 years, but I was a Division I college athlete and was diagnosed with some unbelievably potent genetic diseases. And my life stopped. We spent about 5 years in hospitals and married my wife in that process. And that was an amazing godsend. And we turned to food and farming and a change of lifestyle and truly trying to participate in our own nourishment. And in many ways, that was the healing mechanism in our life. And so when we got into agriculture, and as we ride through agriculture, we have a certain number of methodologies and principles that we don't stray from, I should say it that way. The first, one of which is that when we do provide any bit of feed for our animals, so these are omnivores, pigs and chickens especially, such feed is only certified organic, non-GMO, corn and soy free. So we're those needy farmers who pull in needy inputs. We have high regard for those qualifiers. Well, anyways, it's very expensive. Raising certified organic, non-GMO, soy-free, corn-free, heritage pork was costing an unbelievable amount of money. And so really out of a desperation, but also in terms of accessibility of our meat, but also survivability or sustainability of our system, we decided to innovate. And what we've been able to do here at Timshel, we're raising about 150 pigs a year in forests, shrublands, savannas, and pastures, 100% on non-GMO, soy-free, corn-free, and certified organic, locally milled grains. But previous to our innovations, we were feeding about 60% of our pigs' diets were supplemental grains, things that we purchased and brought to them. Today's system, today's reality due to this innovated system, it's about 3 to 5%, depending on the season. So we've gone from 60% to 5 or 3 to 5%. And we've been able to maintain the same haying weights and size of our pigs in the process. But the way we do that, and I could probably talk for 3 or 4 hours on this, I'm in the middle of writing a book on it. And so I won't do this, but at a very high level, we perceive that pigs have been mistreated in this local farming movement. When you're raising a good number of pigs, a backyard or orchard pig is a different story on a homestead or something. But when you have acreage and you're raising a significant number of pigs, we throw them into the same management category as cattle or sheep or some other species similar to that, because of this predator-prey connection. That is, that predators are pushing prey animals naturally in nature forward and in tight bunches, and they move them systematically. Well, the issue with pigs, if you ask any zoologist, a pig isn't a prey species. Cattle are prey species. Sheep are obviously prey species, but a pig is not. A pig is definitionally a predator. So it's the pigs that we should be pushing the cattle forward, right? If we understand this predator-prey connection and we allocate these species accordingly. And so what we've done is we've opened up our ecosystem and our pigs more or less free range, our 400 acres, and we move them systematically in terms of water access and the 3 to 5% of their daily diet of supplemental grains that we provide access to, provide them access to. We move them around the wildland in that sense. And what we find is that they never create moonscapes, they never create dirt piles, they're constantly walking around and foraging. We've actually tracked a group of our gilts, so these are younger baby girls, around the wildland for a single day, and they walked 12 miles looking for food, and they never really stopped. They were just walking and foraging and walking and foraging, very similar to a wild pig. And so that's just one of the systems that we've been able to play with and innovate. This is one of our sows. In sake of time, a little picture of a wildland tour. We have hundreds of acres of wildflower meadows in the fall that we give a lot of tours for, that we actually manage our cattle for, not for abundant grasses, but abundant wildflower meadows. But I want to end with this in terms of the wildland discussion for sake of time. We maybe 3.5 years ago acquired a 172 acre clear cut, a cut over piece of land. And this is a picture. We got a drone and we flew it over it and we took this picture. This is what 172 acres looked like when we purchased the property. And what we wanted to see is if holistic management, regenerative agriculture, and wildland ecology or ethics or whatever you want to call it could regenerate this without planting it or overly controlling it. What if we treat this as a natural disaster and we systematically and very holistically manage the return of herbivores and the return of beetles and earthworms and the return of these species? And what if we document this entire process? This is what Foodshed Capital, Michael mentioned that they gave us a $15,000 loan. This is what we used it for. We fenced the property, we bought a small herd of cattle, and we started managing it. And I want to show you this picture. Michael, you haven't seen this. This is 3.5 years later, that same shot. There are trees, there are grasses, there are happy, healthy cows. It went from an absolute wasteland. We didn't plant trees, we didn't plant grasses. This is just a system emerging due to holistic management and wildland type ecology. Regenerative agriculture properly understood. And so this is just one of the projects we're working at here at the Wildland. Well, I could talk all day and I wanted to give a high level overview. We have gardens and orchards and we raise sheep and chickens and we do a bunch of things. We've built a network of ponds that we utilize for many different reasons and that's all interesting stuff. But what I want to do now is transition over to something that's a little bit more potent. This is just a project of ours, but there's actual community and collaboration work that we are trying to co-create. We are attempting to co-create. Michael and Foodshed Capital and a whole network of partners are here with us. And so I'm going to transition now for the last couple of minutes and walk through a very different slide deck. About 1.5 years ago, Michael and I were on a phone call with a prospective farm that Foodshed Capital was interested in financing the transition of. It was a commercial set stock cattle farm, and they were interested, the next generation that was acquiring the farm were interested in regenerative, not set stocked, more rotationally grazed enterprise. And Foodshed Capital was there as the financier. The Robinia Institute, an institute that I founded back in 2018 with my wife, that is now the hub of the Savory Institute. If you're familiar with Alan Savory and his work at the Savory Institute, we're a hub there. That's the Robinia Institute. We were there as the land consultants, basically helping facilitate this land transition. And about an hour later, Michael, I don't know if you remember this phone call, but this was the pivotal point in my life in terms of this collaborative event, collaborative motion that we are now a part of. They looked at us and they said, listen, this is fine. You can give us a boatload of capital. You can help us through the process. You can mentor us and train us. You can help us install the fencing and design the fencing and water systems. You can teach us how to manage animals better, but where's the market? Right? You can give us all of this capital, but if we can't sell beef locally, we will fail. The market was the problem. And Michael, you and I had a heart-to-heart after that phone call, and I was debilitated. I was quite depressed, right? We had the opportunity to regenerate hundreds of acres of land, and it was market access that was the problem. And that was the beginning of what has emerged as the Commonwealth Network, which is what this presentation is about. But it's about farmer collaboration. The book that I'm currently in the middle of writing with Chelsea Green Publishing, it's a play on words. It's between commons, communion, and community. It's all the same Latin root as communis, which literally just means common, like the township, the local common place. These are all words derived from that same Latin root, communis. And so if I could, I want to present a problem, which I think we all agree with, and then a solution, and then how we're solving it is how this slide deck is built. But the problem, I think right now, the problem of modern life especially, but also the regenerative agriculture's emergence within this modern life, it's a story of separation. Separation, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that poetic philosophical thing and pull up root words of our modern English words back to Latin again. But separation is built off of the word discernere. Se is exclude. And the second is to sieve. And I want to focus on this idea of sieving. In archaeology, in agriculture, whether or not you're creating compost or you're trying to find artifacts in the soil, we use a sieve to allow finer particles to pass through. It's an item of separation. You can't use this item, this tool, without the intent, without the focus of a true bifurcation of two different realities, whether or not it's unbroken down organic matter with finer compost or ancient pottery and old dirt. The sieve is truly a reductionist, a linear development for isolation and bifurcation. Right now, local farms, as you probably well know, we exist in the world of get big, right? Or lose market, or get marketing or lose your farm. And I think farms need to do less work, not more. My wife and I, we tracked our hours on the farm. It was 120 hours a week, one of the years that we tracked it. And I don't think farmers need to be doing more work. And so the problem of today is this idea of separation. It's a race to the bottom. It's everyone for themselves. It's that rustic individualism gone wrong, in my humble opinion. This is where I am. This is in Nelson County, 1903. This picture was taken. You are looking at my modern day farm, by the way. None of this exists. There's 100 people that live in our little city. There's one standing building. It's the local post office. And it's about the size of my little library here. From 1903 to 2022, rural degeneration is a fine exemplar, an exemplary, noticeable reality of this story of separation. I'll show you this picture here. This is the old town that we live in. This is actually where I'm talking to you from. This is our farmhouse that we live in. None of these buildings exist. These are all overgrown fields. The fields here in the forefront, they've recently been excavated and are now a commercial corn farm because we need more corn. 87% of the corn grown today either goes into ethanol or cattle's stomachs. Cattle stomachs who can't digest it, and ethanol that just burns right into the atmosphere. But we see here the story of separations, farmers working in isolation, right? Whereas the idea of this American farmer, the idea of agriculture in general, the idea of the commons in general is community. It's communion through community. It's collaboration. And so what we're trying to build here is a reality based on that paradigm. It's a reality based on the story of reciprocity. We live in the story of separation. We're co-creating a much more beautiful world, which is the story of reciprocity. Reciprocus, the Latin word again, re means back, procus means forward. It literally means back and forwards and backwards, movement in two directions. We also see this in the regenerative cycle, right? Animals, grass, birds, humans, we are born, we live, we grow, we die, and then we're reborn or we regrow. Depending on your species, you are either reborn or you regrow. So when a grass is grazed by a cow, the grass grows, the cattle graze it, that is the death, right? And then the regrowth is that regenerative force. We measure regeneration. Globally, we measure it with that regrowth. It's how well are we managing life through death for regrowth. That is regeneration. That is regenerative agriculture. And so we in mid 2021, and it matured early in 2022, we have released what is called the Commonwealth Network, which our tagline is scaling regeneration by keeping it small. It's this idea of reciprocity, scaling meaning we're moving it forward. Regeneration by keeping it small, we're moving it in some sense backwards. It's reciprocity in that sense. So let me describe what I'm talking about. So here's the Commonwealth Network. It's a play on words, to be very clear. It's a network of verified regenerative local and human scale farmers in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. It's a play on words because all of these states call themselves commonwealths. But the play is that regeneration, reciprocity, forward and backwards movement, life in the commons, it is what we all share. It is our common wealth, which is why there's a space between common and wealth. So the Commonwealth Network, it's the story of community. It's a nose to tail solution for scaling regeneration by keeping it small. We are a community, as I said, of verified regenerative, holistically managed, human scale farmers, local to the ecosystems in which they both grow and serve, that gather in the name of this much more beautiful world, the story of reciprocity. We care about the soil, that's true, but we also care about the soul. In our humble opinion, it is only through the cultivation of a much more improved soul that we can then regenerate our soils. And it goes in that direction. It goes in that direction. And so what we're creating is this, and then I'll kind of just move very quickly through this last little part, but to give you an overview glance of the system we are creating in huge partnership with Foodshed Capital and this Commonwealth partnership that we've been able to participate with. We are creating what we call a decentralized nodal network. So this is the states of the Mid-Atlantic here in the United States. This is us here in Central Virginia, where my mouse sits. But at every single one of these nodes, hubs, if you will, we have trained educators, trained field ecologists. And here in this presentation, I say X because I didn't know at the time when I created it. It's now 7. We have 7 verified regenerative farms that surround each one of these nodes that are all working together in collaboration and community to co-create a much more beautiful future in terms of collaborating in food systems, collaborating in animal systems, collaborating in nourishment and marketing and everything else. I'll get into that. But this is the system that we are building. This is the Commonwealth Network. So all farms in our network have access to a whole wide array of what we call opportunities. So the first of which, this is my wife, by the way, and that's Sequoia in her backpack. She helps us do field monitoring. As I said, she's a trained field ecologist. So all farms in the Commonwealth Network, which by the way, as of today, we have 37. I'm proud to announce that is a big deal. We just signed up another one just this morning. All farms in the Commonwealth Network have access to what's called ecological outcome verification, or EOV for short. EOV is a globally accepted, scientifically backed land monitoring protocol that can put math and science behind the term regeneration. So when somebody says, I'm a regenerative farmer, this says, prove it. And we'll do all the work for you, but let's actually prove this. And so when we say regenerative agriculture is saving the world, let's make sure it actually is. I mean, let's verify this. And so all of our farms have been verified regenerative. A really nice side benefit to EOV is not just does it prove or validate the regenerative activity of a particular landscape, it also gives a lot of data back to that farmer to be able to make better management decisions. I always give the example, EOV is like love languages. I'm sure half the people on this Zoom here and know their love languages and know their spouse's love language. EOV is like asking your spouse, how am I doing, right? How am I doing at loving you? I think you like gifts, yet I'm always trying to massage your back. That's good intentions without any manifestation of love, of actual affection. EOV is asking nature, how am I doing? We are moving our cattle. We're trying to build soil. We're trying to increase biodiversity. We're trying to produce nutrient-rich and nutrient-dense foods. But how are we doing? Let's verify this and let's look at it. And so it's very powerful for the farms, but it's also very powerful for the marketplace, which I'll get into at the end. They also have access to what's called mentorship, holistic training. Our institute, the Reilly Institute, provides either discounted or free education or training sessions to these farms so that not only do we have good data to impact their management, to help them understand the love languages, how are they doing in managing their landscape, but we can also help them through that process. So we provide a whole wide array of holistic training methodologies and courses and retreats for these farmers to better understand how to move cattle all the way through species identification, all the way through what is carbon sequestration. So when they're talking about it, they can talk in an educated framework. That is mentorship. Another one is farm planning and design. Robinia, the institute that we run here, we manage about 17,000 acres of regenerating farmland in the Mid-Atlantic that is under transition. So we're managing the transition of that landscape. We have a whole team of land designers and excavators. This is one of our guys building a pond here in Virginia, actually. But this is what we call mentorship. All farms in the Commonwealth Network has access to this mentorship. So not only are we monitoring the landscape, not only are we educating the minds and the souls of the farmers, but we're improving their landscape's infrastructure so that they can do not just a good job, but a great job. And so that's mentorship. Another one is operation scaling. We call this means. It's it's really interesting. We take cows from dairies, calves really, from dairies. We acclimate them to good management. We breed them with dairy or with beef animals, and then we redonate them to farmers in need. And so instead of farmers having to go out, raise capital to buy cows so that they can then regenerate their landscape, we give them cows for free. It's called the calf inoculation system. We've donated about 210, 215 calves up until this point in the Commonwealth Network. Just a couple of weeks ago, we donated about 15 steers to a farm that was just starting up. And so imagine you're a new farmer, you get 15 cows for free. That's $30,000 worth of potential revenue in about 18 months, and very little input cost. And so this is really inoculation of a system for true abundance.
Hey, Daniel, can you hear me? It's Woody. I'm just
Yes, sir.
just alerting you to the time. I haven't dared to interrupt you because it's been so.
Oh
beautiful.
boy, no, you're good. This is
we do want to give people a chance to ask questions and have a conversation. So just alerting you to that.
Yeah, I'll go through 2 slides really quick. My apologies. I guess I'm more talkative than I thought I would be. The 2 last remaining opportunities that all of our farmers have access to is, one, infrastructure capital. This is, I mean, you see Foodshed Capital's logo there on the left-hand side of the picture, and Michael's on the right-hand side. This is what you guys all know and love very well. And so they have access to streamlined sources of Foodshed Capital type funds and a number of other partners. And then the last one is a market. Bringing through this, we've actually created a sister organization. It's called Commons Provisions. It purchases verified regenerative local and human scale meats from our verified regenerative local and human scale farms in the network at unbelievably high premiums. And then we distribute, we market, we distribute, we warehouse, we process that for local consumers, local families. So it's local food, local farms, local families, all local and delivered by local human beings. All interesting stuff. I can answer some questions about it if anybody has it. The main thing I want to note here is very recently, we ran these metrics, and I can verifiably tell you that in the commercial system, if you go to the Whole Foods and you buy grass-fed and finished beef here in Charlottesville, Virginia, it's probably coming from White Oak Pastures. And White Oak Pastures gets about 9 cents for every $1 you spend. At Commons Provisions, you get 82, or the farm gets 82 cents for every $1 you spend. And so we go from 9 cents to the farmer to 82 cents to the farmer. That's the system we're trying to create. It's built on truly actually paying farmers for their work without having them do more marketing and spend more time, either not farming or not spending time with their family. And so that's Common Provisions. This is his wholesale and retail meat aggregator for the network. So with that, I'm done. I will stop talking. I'm so sorry. I will stay for as long as needed to answer all the questions, to be very clear, but that's all I got.
Let's just start with the last question that came in. Daniel Duoff, good, perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't usually use the word awesome. I'm too old to use the word awesome. But that was awesome. All right. So, I mean,
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, there, you know, you threw around a few numbers during the course of the thing, which are extremely provocative, but I'm not going to start the questioning myself. Since I said that, I'm just going to flag the 2 that stuck out to me. You didn't have that many numbers in there. But the first one was when you said you shifted the hog feed ratio from like 60% supplemental grain to 5%. And then at the end, you said the dollars to the farm, kind of a similar thing. You're kind of doing jujitsu on the system. But to pull it off that dramatically is certainly, what's the word? I don't know, to the seasoned, bedraggled, I'm not describing myself, person who's been around a while. It's hard to believe that you can pull all that off and make it work as an enterprise, but I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying it's amazing. It's amazing. So a lot of very deep stuff, both philosophically and financially, that you brought up. I wanted to, just before we go into Q&A, I just wanted to recognize 2 people who are on the call. Susan Brady, did she just, oh, there she is, she's still there, good. So Susan Brady is one of the founders of the Two Forks Club, which was the first slow money 0% loan group in the Roaring Fork Valley in Carbondale, in the Colorado. So Susan, thanks for joining us. And Robin Van Asperen just came on. I think he's still here somewhere. I hope he is. I'm not positive. I think he is. Robin, if you're there, put your oh good, but just put your camera on. So Robin this morning became our 9th Beetcoin advisor. He is a brilliant, interesting person from grew up in Amsterdam, is now in Costa Rica, doing all kinds of community level work in food systems and whatnot. So I just wanted to recognize you. Thanks for coming on, to Robin and Susan. Okay, so now the floor is open for questions. I saw that Patricia Bucher did put a question in right at the end, talking about the price of your stuff at Whole Foods. Oh, wait a minute. No, it did not the price at Whole Foods, because you're not selling at Whole Foods.
In comparison to.
That's
yeah.
right. So the price in comparison to Whole Foods. So yeah, just talk a little bit more about, that did occur to me and probably many people on the call too, about, so what does this actually cost to the consumer? Just say a little bit about that.
In beef, this number is relative to me. It just earlier today we were running it. We're about $1 more expensive. So Whole Foods is selling 100% grass-fed and finished regenerative beef for, I think, $7 a pound. We're selling it for $8. So minor. Whole Foods is not, and I bring up beef for a reason. Whole Foods is not selling chemical-free pork. There's no such thing as certified organic, soy-free, corn-free, and non-GMO heritage pork at any grocery store. I wish, if anybody is the buying director of Whole Foods, you call me. You're gonna have to pay us more, because farmers are worth more than I think you allocate. But so there's some of our products that just aren't comparative. I should say it that way. But in terms of beef, it's simple: $1 more.
Could I ask my question? Actually, sorry, it was because you were talking. You said that traditionally a farmer or a rancher who's raising meat gets 9 cents. And then you said you guys are paying like 82 cents. So I'm just wondering, how does it work out economically? I know the profit's you're giving each farmer more money, but how does that work financially for the consumer?
The reason that price differentiation or differential is possible, our beef, again, using beef as the example, travels very few miles between being produced and being consumed. I'm using Charlottesville's Whole Foods as an example because I'm relatively close to Charlottesville, and I am good friends with the farm that raises their beef, White Oak Pastures, Will Harris, down in South Georgia. And so I know all parts of their system well. At least I've been able to ask questions, and I hope they're answered well or honestly. But the point is, White Oak Pastures in South Georgia produces beef. It's harvested. It's then shipped in commercial freights, 18-wheelers, to a Whole Foods distribution point. It's then warehoused and frozen there for a period of time, and then it brings over to whatever Whole Foods destination wants to purchase that product, right? And so it's moved 3 or 4 times. It's moved thousands and thousands of miles. It's packaged very properly. We don't repackage our products. When we buy, I was just at a farm, Verdant Acres Farm, their Central Virginia farm, family farm, John and Mary Peterson run it over in Rafine, Virginia, over in the Shenandoah Valley. We just picked up maybe 1,000 chickens from them, maybe less, a couple less, maybe 900 or so. And for this year, and it's their packaging, right? We're not going to take their chicken, unpackage it, pay people to unpackage it, buy new plastic packaging, put our labels onto it, purchase label machines, run label machines, fix label machines, then actually repackage their system or their products in a commons provisions bag. All of the products that we get are packaged from our farms, and they stay in those packages for 2 reasons, one of which is excessive cost. It is so costly to run a co-packer to unpackage beef only to repackage it in better packaging, just with your logo on it. But also 2, not only is it more expensive, but you lose the transparency. When you buy meat from Commons Provisions, like, we delivering meat into Charlottesville tomorrow for all the orders that were placed this past week, your beef is going to say 3 Springs Farm on it, Arrowhead, Virginia, and your pork is going to say Timshel Wildland pork. It's like on the package, right? And so there's full transparency, but there's also full awareness of who these farms are. And if you like their meat and you want to kick Commons out, buy it directly. That's part of our business plan. It's a different model, a different paradigm. That's really, we can talk a long time, but at its simplest point, it's just a different paradigm. It's a great question, though.
Thank you.
I'm just going to read two questions that are in the chat room in the order that they came in. One is from Dan Lefevre, and I would urge you to jump in just the way Patricia did. If you want to restate your question yourself or ask, I'm just going to read it as it's in the chat room. When you are gifting cattle to a startup farm, do you require that farm to pay it forward as in the heifer project?
We don't. We don't. All we ask is that they stay within our community, meaning that we don't want this to be a donation and we never hear from you again. We want these cows to form a relationship. If you remember, regeneration is that relationship. And so we want to stay in contact. We want to help. We want to be a part of this. But that's all we ask, nothing more.
All right, and then we have a question from, I might not be saying I'm probably not saying the name correctly, Zia Shimahara. Are there organizations in other states doing this kind of community support work?
That's a great question. I don't think so, but if you want to, I will give you all of this and you just do it. Not that I know of. So we're in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, back up to Pennsylvania again. So I don't know where you are, but those are the states that we're operating in.
Yeah, I'm West Coast. I'm in California.
If you want to do it, just call me. I'll give you all of it.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the person who would be doing it, but I am looking for, I just graduated with a master's degree in resilient and sustainable communities. So I'm not really in the farm area. I'm more in the how can we get land and get farming and education and all of these regenerative ideas to the next generation. And so what you're doing is something I'd want to get my toe dipped into and see if we can make connections and figure out how to do things like that out here on the West Coast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know, Woody, if you want to introduce us or how that would work, but I would love to talk to you.
Great.
I'd love to
Okay.
give you everything we have.
Yeah, Zia, just send your email to woody@slowmoney.org, say hi, and then I'll just connect you directly to Daniel.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. And then John Brown asked, how many mouths do you feed?
It's a good question. In this year's business plan, and so far it seems like it'll be pretty well actualized, it'll be about 600 different families. So depending on the size of that family. 1,000, 1,200 tops. I don't know. Good question.
Right. Here's another one that just came in again from Dan Lefevre. What are you doing to set up butchering facilities to deal with 1-year scheduling backlog for processing?
Good question. Michael should be smirking. We are doing a lot. A massive component of this climate smart commodities grant that we're working on deals with alleviating some of these burdens. We are partnering up with an organization out of Vermont and New York State that is currently and actively building USDA inspected processing facilities to join these two efforts. They have the facilities without the network. We have the network without the facilities. And it seems like it's going to be a really great partnership. We have built a custom exempt facility that we're piloting now. We're creating pitch decks for round A funding to start investigating the larger launch and construction of more custom exempt facilities, mobile harvest units. We're planning on hopefully doing 7 of them, I think. I don't know, Michael, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but something like that. 7 different large ruminant mobile harvest units in the mid-Atlantic. Those are all dreams at this time. That's all we have. Processing is a huge hurdle. It's very expensive. It's very expensive, in the millions and millions and millions of dollars to even start thinking about it. And so if you know anybody who has that capital, you tell us. We have more minds on this problem than you can imagine. I was just on a phone call earlier today and there was 3 or 4 people. It was an hour and a half long. We were only talking about processing and the bottlenecks. So.
I mean, it might be worth pausing just for a second here. I'm just cognizant of the time. We're at the hour mark, but I'll keep recording for a while longer, and hope that most people can stay on, and mostly everyone's still on. So the capital part. You mentioned that you got a $15,000 0% loan from Foodshed Capital, but that's obviously a small loan for a business of the scale that you are already involved in, not to mention all the ambitions and the other pieces. And
Right.
So I don't know, I'd invite either of you, Daniel or Michael, just say a little something about the funding landscape and about, because after all, the umbrella that brought us all together is slow money, more specifically Beetcoin. The idea behind Beetcoin being there isn't anywhere near enough money in financial institutions that will ever get out of financial institutions to get local, to do what we need to do at the local level. So Daniel, in a way, I'm like the Daniel Griffith of finance, except I'm not as,
More than
except I'm not as good at it as you are. So, you know, the idea of deconstructing all the layers of intermediation and trying to get things to be as direct as possible is the ethos, right? And from where I sit, the reason it's important is because the only place that there is enough intention and enough money to make the changes we need is direct. It's local. It's the people who live, it's the relationship. I mean, we're on the same page philosophically without any question at all. So it just might be interesting just to pause for a second, just talk a little bit more about the capital, because one of the questions was about where do you get the capital to fund all this stuff. So just say
it's a great question. In full transparency, I work for free. I'm not paid, and I don't intend to be paid for quite some time. And so it's not like we have much capital to work with. All of it's going to the farmers and to build systems that are farmers first. Really, I should say farmers only, although that sounds like a dating site. We received, as Michael said earlier, a local regional food system grant from the USDA. It was $250,000. Rebinia was a sub-awardee or one of the members of that grant's partnership. We were allocated, I think, Michael, you can critique me, $40,000 to $50,000 of capital to do this work. That said, all of that capital was given to farmers to do ecological outcome verification for free. It's a very expensive landscape monitoring protocol. And so all of that money Rebinia is using to do EOV for these farms at no cost to them. I don't think farms need to be paying more to own or operate their landscapes. And so we use that capital for that, which I think is exactly how it should have been spent. I'm very excited about that. I do wish I would have taken a little bit of a piece of that, Michael. Next time you remind me to do that, maybe. But I don't know. At the same time, I don't know if I would. We raised a small amount of capital to kickstart the initial distribution site. So we have a small freezer warehouse facility, if you will, with an internet fulfillment center. It's basically a shipping container next to another shipping container. We're trying to pilot this as best as we possibly can with as little investment as we possibly can so that we can maintain these prices for these farmers. I have no interest in paying farmers $2.50 a pound for hang weight of their beef. I want to sit more at that $6 to $7 a pound. And the more thrifty we are as an organization, the more solidified that price will be for our farmers. And I think that's exactly where it needs to be. That said, we are in the middle of rounds of funding or attempting to get rounds of funding to scale. So the foundation, of the Commonwealth Network, as I said, is scaling regenerative, scaling the regenerative movement by keeping it small. But even in the meat aggregation side, our idea is as we get bigger, we get more descaled, decentralized, and smaller appearing. And so as we bring more farmers on board, we stop bringing their meat to Central Virginia and we bring it to their local community. Ideally, our business plan sits at 3 years, no animals living or processed, packaged for consumption, human consumption, travel more than 30 miles total ever. Not 3,000 miles, it's 30. That's the end goal that we're just killing ourselves to achieve. And I think it's still very possible. So very clearly, to be exceptionally clear, thrifty in the beginning, to make sure I answer this question, thrifty in the beginning, but there is capital that we absolutely need to continue this work. I think it's about $74,000 a hub to get started. That's what the freezer facilities, the internet fulfillment centers, the add-on to the e-commerce site to make sure the software is working appropriately, and to bring on enough farmers to make the distribution worth it for that local community. I think it's 74,000. So not a lot, but a lot.
Michael Reilly, can I ask you to just kind of chime in a little bit on the kind of—
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, of course. I would agree with Daniel that the capital, on the one hand, the capital is there. It's gravitating to this work. I'm seeing that every day, just the interest from funders that are really interested in supporting regenerative agriculture. Certainly never enough. So I guess this is my opportunity to put a plug to everybody on this call to donate to Beetcoin, because I say it somewhat in jest, but we do need, we need all hands on deck, if you will. I mean, everybody, whether it's a little bit of money that you can contribute or large foundations that have millions of dollars to contribute. We need more capital to be able to expedite this work. I think the capital will flow. The question is, will it flow fast enough, given the challenges that we're under from an ecological climate standpoint. And I think a lot of the cogs in the wheel have to begin sort of all rotating at the same time, and that's the capital flowing, that's the consumer making the right choices, and that's encouraging. We see more and more consumers that are becoming aware of the food they're eating and how it impacts health. We're seeing just a really encouraging trend in the healthcare field toward understanding the connection between the human biome and soil health and the food we eat. Dr. Zach Bush is a good example of that. Actually, if any of you know him, he started his work here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So another connection there. With all that said, I think the great inhibitor, of course, is policy. And so we all need to continue to do our part to push to get leaders elected that will continue to push for the right policy. Of all the things that I am optimistic about, the one thing I'm most pessimistic about is policy. And I do have trouble seeing how we are going to get a new farm bill anytime soon. But there is certainly a lot more pressure being put on that process than ever before. We have some people in the highest ranks of government that clearly are understanding the food system, the limitations of the food system, the evils of the food system, if you will. Many of you listened to Senator Booker talk. He gets it. We need more politicians like that to move the needle on this policy. Again, I'm not hopeful given I'm not going to get into politics by any means, but not hopeful given the craziness that we're seeing in Washington. But I would implore all of you, in addition to contributing whatever you can to the cause, whether that is Beetcoin or Foodshed Capital or any other organization that is doing this work, that you really pay attention to the people that you are electing and making sure that you are pushing hard on them to understand what is going on with our food system and what it can be when you take a look at the work that people like Daniel are doing. So that's my take on it.
So I'm going to, what's the word? If I had a glass to raise, I would raise it, but I would also smile and argue with you a little bit on the last point. So I was just going back and forth. I think many of you on this call saw the Call to Farms piece that we circulated last week, and some of you replied already, and so thank you for that. But I rekindled a number of conversations because of that piece, and one of them is with a retired investment banker at a very high level in New York, and he's back in his digs in North Carolina. And we had quite a bit of back and forth on it because he got kind of excited by the message, the thing. We went back and forth, and he related stuff that I didn't know about his life story. How all those years when he was doing the investment banking, and he was actually heavily in kind of oil stuff and all kinds of stuff, he was running some nonprofits that were doing work in agriculture and food systems stuff. And he was very heavily involved in efforts to lobby on the Farm Bill. And he just kind of shared some of the anecdotes along the way, how at one point they thought they got pretty far in the process, and then an unnamed politician who is still very powerful in Congress right now quashed it and the thing and the blah blah. And so now, what is this guy doing? He's completely local. He's just like, he's so local that he won't really even engage with slow money. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, he just said, I'm just doing everything right in this town. I'm just doing everything right in this town, and that's all I'm doing. And so I sent him a funny little note back, which is kind of on Daniel's wavelength. And you will see this on the Beetcoin website if you take the time to poke around some of the nooks and crannies. It said we need to go slow more quickly, we need to go local more collectively, and we need to go small in a much bigger way. And Daniel, you said a whole bunch of things during your talk which reflected these beautiful kind of creative tensions. I said jujitsu when I was responding. We have to take things and kind of twist them a little bit and release a different kind of energy. But I think so. Sorry, this is taking me so long to say. So I would just say it seems to me I'm rueful when I hear people go all the way to policy and go, oh man, we just got a lobby and we're going to change the farm bill. And then at the other end, we're just going local. I tried all that. I'm checking out. Don't ask me for anything. I'm just going local. I mean, it seems to me we have to find a kind of, certainly where I'm trying to put all my energies is trying to create ways for local energy to grow, but to stay local, but to mutually reinforce. Of course, that's what we're doing on this call right now. We're all local and we're all sharing in some way, learning. So anyhow, it is 8:12 p.m. I think I should stop recording. That doesn't mean you have to go anywhere. Thank you for coming. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for Daniel and Michael for giving us your time. We know how hard you're working already. So, spending this kind of time is just another chore in a way. I'll stay on and gab with anybody as long as you want. Daniel, why don't you just stay on for a minute or two? Just you may have people who want to, there were some more questions we didn't get to in the chat room. And I just thought I wanted to make sure everybody was heard. So peace, just peace, huh? All right. Thank you all.